Okay, now we'd like to welcome Steve Sverdlik, PhD on Good Without God.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I have to say that I can't even describe my feelings thinking that there is a fellowship of Freethought and that it exists, and seems quite wonderful to me. It's just very exciting, and I'm very glad to be here, and I'm glad there is such an organization. May it grow and grow. And I'm not sure what you call this time. It's not the sermon, right? Is it the talk? What is it I'm giving you here? It's not a lecture either, even though I'm a trained philosopher. What's it? I'm sharing. It's okay. I'm happy to do that. And of course, you know, my job is to give lectures, and you don't want that. So I will talk about how to be good without God. You'll excuse me if it's a little philosophical. That's the way I come at these things. But in a way, I take it the question is how to be, as it's a psychological question. It's a question about how to live without God. We need arguments to think about this, but we need also to make decisions and to live in certain ways. And how can we do that if we don't believe in God? I guess I'd break it up into two different questions. One is the question, really basically philosophical. Is there goodness and badness? Is there rightness and wrongness if there is no God? Or is it correct, as a novelist once said, that if God is dead, everything is permitted? And that, I think, is a mistake. I think if there's no God, and I believe there is no God myself, I am an atheist. If there is no God, I still think that things are right and wrong and good and bad. The goodness and badness of things exists even though there's no God, in my opinion. Why is that? Well, just think about some act that's bad. Let's just take, for example, lying to somebody about taking out a loan, to take something relevant in the last few years, and all the fraud that went on in the mortgage business and in banking. Right? Why not just lie to somebody about taking out a loan when it would be a very bad idea for that person to do it? Well, if we just sort of take God out of the picture and we think about this as a moral question, right, well, there's still going to be the harm that will occur to this person, this potential borrower, from my lie, that if Jones is the person that I'm going to try to take out a loan, and there's no God in the picture, well, Jones is still there, and of course I'm still there in that picture, and what we're assuming is that taking out this loan will harm Jones, right? Harm his family, mess up his plans in terms of what he wants to do with his money and his resources. All of that is still there, whether there's God or not. And so honesty is right, I believe, even if there's nobody there to, so to speak, make it right or to bring about its rightness. The rightness of being honest comes from the fact that Jones, who wants to borrow money, needs honesty from me in order to plan his life and carry out his plans in the best way. So the wrongness of deceit doesn't depend on God's existence. And turning it around, not just to think about the wrongness of certain things, but the rightness of other things. So, for example, thinking about the bravery of the people in Tucson who took away the ammunition clip from that gunman. The rightness of their bravery, their stepping forward, still exists, even if no one in the sky told them to do this, or even if there's no one watching over this from the sky. By doing that, they saved other people's lives. The goodness of their bravery, the goodness of their public spirit exists independently of God. Right? So the way I would put it is that our life has moral drama to it. The decisions we make are very important. Right? And that we choose rightly is a very important thing, and not choose wrongly. And that drama of our lives doesn't go away if no one is in the sky watching what we do. In fact, really, if you think about it, the drama becomes that much greater, right? It's up to us whether we do what's right, and if we don't do it, it won't get done. Right? There's no extra act where things get corrected, in my opinion. So the rightness matters and is even more dramatic given that it's ours to decide. Another aspect of the question that philosophers have thought about, and also I think is very relevant to us personally, is, so to speak, the incentives to be good and bad, or what philosophers call the reasons to be good and bad. Right? And there are those, you hear this all the time, who say, well, you know, if there isn't a heaven and hell, why should I be good? Right? What's in it for me? Right? Where's the payoff? I have to say I find this a fairly crude way to look at these things. And let me just briefly share with you two thoughts about this. Again, they come from philosophy, but again, they are meaningful personally too. Well, first of all, in a way, I've just already talked about why we should be good and should avoid doing wrong. I've just talked about what the stakes are, that if people are harmed by being bad or being dishonest, right, I've already given you a reason not to be dishonest. Right? I didn't bring any sanctions or carrots or stick into the picture. I've told you what's at stake morally in being honest or being brave. And so, insofar as we can do the right thing for the right reason, I've already discussed what that is. Right? And all of us really should try to do the right thing for the right reason. But we all know we don't always do the right thing for the right reason. We don't always do the right thing, period. But even when we do the right thing, we don't always do it for the right reason. And it is true that for some of us, for some things, in fact, for all of us, for some things, we need to have other incentives besides just the goodness or rightness of some things and the wrongness of others. It just is true. I confess this, you know, as much as I think others would too, that, for example, there are things like traffic laws and tax laws and so on that if there weren't sanctions attached to them, I might not do them. Right? So we have to add some extra incentives, or incentivize, as they say in business, goodness, and disincentivize badness. And of course, heaven and hell are one way to do this. They are a magnificently clever way to do this. But I don't believe they're there. Those incentives don't exist. So how can we add incentives to do what's right and avoid what's wrong? Well, it's not like this is rocket science. Societies have been doing this since time immemorial. There are social sanctions where we can criticize people who do wrong. We can praise people who do right and honor them in various ways. And of course, there are legal systems whereby we can put disincentives on certain kinds of actions. Right? And there's a sense in which, as someone said, by doing this, human beings themselves become God. Right? We ourselves add incentives to the right things and disincentives to the wrong things, and we try to put extra incentives for the things that we care about. And so, for me, the legal system is a very important human institution, for example, because it can sort of tip people in the right direction if they otherwise aren't headed there. And we all need it to some degree or other. So it is a very useful and important institution. Right? And so I believe that what we can do if we take God out of the picture is to think critically and rationally about the incentives we want to add so that people who aren't going to do the right thing for the right reason will do the right thing for the wrong reason. They'll do it because they may go to jail if they do the wrong thing. Not the highest and most admirable thing, but it helps to have it in humane society that we have this kind of fallback mechanism to utilize as well. And we need to think about that and utilize it correctly. Right? As a last thought, and I don't have time to go into this, but I'm sure you've all talked about this, we need to think about, well, what do we incentivize and how to be good in the sense of, if you take religion out of the picture of human life, what should we incentivize? And which is to say, which things are good and which things are bad. And I do believe that we will change our views about some of these things. If you asked me personally, that we can no longer, or I can no longer anyway, think about being gay in the same way, knowing that there is no God who has prohibited this, in my opinion. And so the idea that the legal system should punish somebody for being gay is something that we need to change. And I think we think about other things. Once we think about morality in this secular way, as I'm saying, we'll think about things like pollution differently. We won't think that the world is just ours, that we have to just, we have been given dominion over the world and we can do with it as we see fit. That, I think, is an idea that's based on some outmoded religious ideas. So when we think about how to be good, it's to some degree correct that the goodness is still there if we take God out of the picture. We should still be honest and brave, right? But in other ways, what goodness is going to change, I believe. We're going to think about it in some different ways. And some of the religious ideas about what goodness consists in will be abandoned. And we'll have a secular morality in which some of the old prohibitions will just be seen as superstitions, and our lives will be all the better for it. So that's really a topic for another day, but that's also an aspect of how to be good without God. Thank you.
Secular morality. All right, so now we're going to actually play a video from one of our favorites, Tim mentioned. Touches a little bit about morality of the good book. I usually don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and many of the stories in the Bible, though predating the Bible, you can pull some good pieces out of it as long as you discount the permission of slavery, rape, genocide, incest. Yeah, let's just play the video. I'd be here for a while.